Welcome to WiredScore's webinar, Demystifying Managed Wi-Fi, the biggest trend from 2022 in the world of multifamily development, the need for office-grade connectivity in the home. Managed Wi-Fi not only supports the delivery of office-grade connectivity, but enables smart building flexibility and drives revenue. Thank you all so much for joining. We are so glad you're here to learn more. Our plan is to do more webinar sessions like this one, so we hope that you will continue to join us. My name, unfortunately, that you can't see me, is Rachel Wesley, and I lead the WiredScore's client success team here in North America. And today I have the pleasure of introducing you to our speaker for today's session, WiredScore's very own Dave Miller. As WiredScore's Director of Business Development, Dave is a thought leader on trends in technology and real estate, offering his expertise to landlords and developers, ensuring their buildings meet their occupiers' connectivity needs. During our session, you will be able to ask questions in the chat for Dave to answer. So thank you all so much, and over to you, Dave.
Awesome. Thank you, Rachel. Welcome, everyone. I'm excited for today's webinar, the first one in a series of hopefully many more. As Rachel said, my name is Dave Miller. On the business development team. I've been with WiredScore for 6 years, and excited to talk about what I truly believe is really an impactful trend that we're seeing in the multifamily space. Just a quick agenda for today's conversation. I'll give any of you that may not be familiar with WiredScore just a very quick background on who we are as a business and what we do. I'll share some trends and some insights that we've seen with our unique global perspective, looking at this intersection of building technology and commercial real estate. And then we'll discuss managed Wi-Fi, what it is, why I think it's really the future of internet and residential. And I'll walk you through a sort of case study or hypothetical case study. So, To sort of give the quick backstory on WiredScore, our company was founded about 10 years ago in New York. We're actually a public-private partnership with Mayor Bloomberg's office and the city of New York. The pain point that stemmed the creation of the business was a lack of transparency for connectivity in office buildings. It was businesses moving into buildings and asking a very simple question: is this building well connected? And really most building owners, landlords, managers, leasing teams were unable to answer that question. So we created WiredScore to set a standard for technology and connectivity in buildings. We've grown that now across the globe. We're in 33 countries. We've certified over close to 1 billion square feet of office space. And we're really proud to be working with many of you and many of the top owners globally across the planet. So that's sort of the very quick background. I should also mention that while our company was founded on the asset class of office, about 2.5 years ago, we launched WiredScore Home, which is our somewhat newer and fast-growing multifamily certification, which is sort of the focus for today's conversation. I wanted to start with a sort of statistic that I think really shows why we created WiredScore Home, why we felt this was something that we had to evolve our business into. First off, we were getting pressure from our existing clients saying, hey, you've helped us dramatically on the office side. We'd love some support as we think about residential. But this is a really interesting statistic from the National Multifamily Housing Council, who we partnered with for the launch of WiredScore Home. And half of all residents in the 2022 Kingsley survey said that a connectivity certification would help influence their decision to lease their next home. I thought that was really powerful and kind of brings us to where we are today and why WiredScore Home has taken off the way it has. So to touch on a few trends, I think WiredScore sits at this unique intersection where I joke with some of my biggest clients saying we have a bigger portfolio than anyone, meaning we are looking at thousands and thousands of buildings across the globe in any given year. And we've got this sort of hyper focus on the intersection of technology and real estate. We have looked at a number of different data sources to really come up with what we think residents care about. At the end of the day, I think the most important trend that we've seen, and this is a trend that we were seeing, which has been massively accelerated by COVID, is office-grade connectivity and the importance and requirement of bringing office-grade connectivity to the home. You could almost stop the argument for managed Wi-Fi and the trends and insights there, and say, hey, we need to bring office grade connectivity to the home because people are working from home, people are gaming at home, people are streaming this webinar from home, they're talking to their families from home. Bandwidth usage has climbed drastically. And I'll talk more about what is office grade connectivity and what sort of defines that. But a few other things that we're seeing is the importance of connectivity everywhere. So not being tied to your unit within a building and being able to traverse the building with great, robust, and secure connectivity. Having connectivity the day you move in, really making sure that there's no time to start nitpicking some of the other things that may be on the punch list, and just getting that Netflix up and streaming as quickly as possible. Smart technology, I'll talk a little bit more about this, but smart technology in the home, in the unit, as well as smart base building technology. And then cellular connectivity, the ability to use your phone to keep that call as you move throughout the building. We've got some data here from the National Multifamily Housing Council. Again, as I mentioned, we partnered with them when we launched WiredScore Home in North America. This is from 2 different years, 2022 and 2020. I won't go through each of these, but a couple of stats to call out. I thought really interesting that 90% of residents say that high-speed internet is so important that they would be willing to pay $50 or more per month to ensure that was there. 33% of residents are working from home at least one day per week, every day, and 50% of them are working 1 day per week. And so this was, again, hundreds of thousands of residents were surveyed in this. I believe it was 400,000 one year and 650,000 for last year. A couple other ones, 46% of residents are checking their cell phone on tour, and this number continues to grow. And I think 75% of residents want pre-installed Wi-Fi. They want to be able to move in and not deal with some of the hassles that inherently come with what we'll call traditional Wi-Fi. Traditional Wi-Fi, I'll use that term today, and that really refers to a Comcast, Verizon, a situation where you've got a modem router combination in your unit, you're responsible for a self-install, and it's your network that really covers whatever it can within your unit. So to move into managed Wi-Fi, I guess at the highest level, why is managed Wi-Fi the next place to go after looking at some of these trends? And the short answer is that I believe that managed Wi-Fi actually is the single solution that answers many of these trends. It's the means in which a landlord or developer of multifamily can address some of these trends in a single push. So we'll start with what is managed Wi-Fi. Managed Wi-Fi is defined by 2 main attributes, structure and service. If we look at structure, managed Wi-Fi can be thought of as a fiber backbone running up the riser of the building with switches built out every couple of floors, depending on the size of floor plates and number of units per floor. And then horizontal cabling that go out to the units and maybe out to the hallways, depending on the architecture, that provide commercial grade wireless access points like you'd see in an office building, blanketing the entire building, units, common spaces, roof deck, parking, absolutely everything blanketed by this singular, secure, enterprise-grade Wi-Fi network. The other attribute is service. We don't call it managed Wi-Fi for nothing. The managed service is a key aspect of this. So managed Wi-Fi is installed by a third-party managed service provider who's going to design, install, and then manage both the hardware if something were to fail, the customer service so that your property managers are never getting a phone call that the internet is down, 24-hour, 365 customer support. And they may even manage direct billing and other aspects of the network. So getting into the benefits of managed Wi-Fi. There's really 5 benefits. And I'll start, we'll talk through each of them, but again, commercial grade connectivity everywhere, the smart building foundation, cellular coverage, and then of course the one wants to talk about this is a found revenue source for many buildings. It's not often that WiredScore gets to point to things with our clients and say, hey, we believe this is the best technology approach and the best experience you can give to your customers. And you can also generate some money off of this. So we'll talk about that as well. And that's where we'll run a little case study. I also should mention here, if there are questions, feel free to, I believe, drop them in the chat, and we'll see if they either make it to me or Rachel will be able to bring them to me, and we can answer anything as we go. So the first trend and the first attribute, first benefit of managed Wi-Fi is around commercial grade connectivity. So what does that actually mean? A couple different things. When you're feeding this network, there's sort of two parts to it. One, the network itself is made up of commercial grade components. So typically we think about Cisco, Meraki, or CommScope as companies who are producing enterprise grade Wi-Fi equipment that would be used again in commercial offices, hotels. We're now bringing this equipment into the multifamily space. The other side of it, and I think the most important side, is the actual service coming to the building. This is not, this is fiber service. It's not a coax or it's not a copper connection. And the benefits of this service are numerous. The first one, speed. Everyone likes to start with and talk about speed. Gig plus speed. Fiber is light traveling through glass. With a few small exceptions, there's nothing faster than the speed of light. And that means that the speed in which you can bring to a building that has fiber is really going to be a means of what you're willing to pay for, and therefore not something that can get overloaded. It allows you flexibility over time to ramp up if you need more bandwidth. It also gives residents the ability to pay for a higher speed package if they so choose, because the building actually has those speeds available. To have a gig or even a 10 gig circuit into a managed Wi-Fi network is not uncommon, and we even see some buildings going as far as putting in a primary fiber circuit and a backup circuit as well to ensure uptime. The next attribute of commercial grade connectivity is best effort versus dedicated connection. So if you were to procure a traditional, let's say Comcast Xfinity circuit for your home and pay for 250 megabits, you would be getting what is called a best effort package. Best effort means that you will likely get that 250 megabits, but if you don't, there's no recourse. You can call and their customer support may try to help you, but you really can't do anything about it. And it's best effort. If everyone in your neighborhood is watching Netflix and talking on FaceTime, you will likely see slower speeds. This becomes particularly problematic in a multifamily environment where you've got the density often of both the building as well as an urban area that building may lay in. And with commercial grade connectivity or dedicated internet access, we see a service agreement that says you will get the speed that you pay for all the time, no matter what. The next attribute is the symmetrical connection, and this is probably as technical as we'll get today. When you look at an internet connection, you'll often see two different speeds. If you go to speedtest.net or look at your bill, you'll see an upload speed and a download speed. Everyone talks about the download speed. Even I just talked about 250 megs as a download speed. Symmetrical connection means that your upload speed and your download speed will be the same. That is something that you will not see with a coax or traditional home grade internet connection. The upload speeds will often be 5, 10, 15, maybe 20 megabits per second as compared to 100 to 500 megabits on the download. Things like this, streaming video, something I think we all do at home, are using that upload. Accessing cloud applications are all using that upload. And the upload is a really important part of having a great, seamless, and robust internet experience. Latency is really my favorite sort of analogy to talk about latency in a way that we've all felt pain is when you're on a Zoom call with colleagues and you realize everyone seems to be cutting each other off, and it's not just a bad work dynamic. It's really that the latency, the delay in that connection is causing one person to step on the other person while they're talking. And then the last last attribute here is, as I mentioned earlier, a service level agreement. Not only does that service level agreement specify that you'll get the internet speeds that you've paid for at all times, but it will also specify uptime, which is the amount, the promise from the provider to ensure that connection is online. And you can specify more uptime for more money as you see fit. We'll also specify the amount of time in which a truck will get out to fix any connection issues. If there was a manhole fire or a telephone pole comes down, how quickly will that connection get repaired? As you all know, that is absolutely critical to ensuring that your residents stay happy and connected. Synonymous. I'll quickly call out here that Verizon Fios is something I hear a lot from my clients saying, hey, Fios, that's fiber. We see, fastest fiber network on TV. Verizon Fios is fiber, and it is generally a symmetrical connection, but it is not dedicated internet access. You can get some pretty high speeds, but you'll notice that they'll crawl down pretty quickly when your network starts to load up. So Fios is often better than your coax connections of maybe an Xfinity, but not nearly at the same level as commercial grade connectivity. The next value of managed Wi-Fi is connectivity everywhere. I talked to a lot of my clients who have built some really cool amenities within their multifamily developments. Maybe the most popular one we're seeing now is co-working or space to work within the building. And I've heard a lot of yeah, it's interesting. People don't use those spaces as much as you would think. We always jump back to connectivity to say, hey, what kind of connectivity exists there? Is there a base building sort of lobby level Wi-Fi connection that's not fast enough for people to use Zoom, not secure, something that people may not be using your amenity spaces because they actually can't get the connectivity that they need? One of the beauties of managed Wi-Fi was the ability to traverse throughout the entire building and stay connected to your own personal network. So, managed Wi-Fi can be set up numerous different ways, but an example and sort of a way that I like to see it is where I may be in unit 419 on the 4th floor, and I'll have my own network that I'm connecting to, Dave's home network 419. But as I move to the fitness center, to the roof deck, and to the co-working space, I remain connected to Dave's home network 419, no matter where I go. This gives me the security. It also allows me to ensure I've got commercial grade connectivity everywhere. That might be important for the co-working, but it also might be watching Netflix on your iPad while you're on the treadmill, whatever it may be. Also, sort of falling within the connectivity everywhere bucket is that it really should be day zero setup, meaning that because the network is in place, the hardware is not being changed per unit. This is something that is provisioned as quickly as someone can type, as quickly as a new lease is signed, their internet can be set up. Smart building. So this is an interesting one. I like to think about smart within the multifamily space with sort of two sides. You've got smart home, which is inside the resident space, and smart building, which is the base building and the rest of the building. What I won't get into today is smart locks and thermostats and all that stuff. Those are absolutely key features. And I think that's something that the multifamily industry, frankly, is struggling to figure out exactly how to work with and how to integrate. But I think the most important part when we think about managed Wi-Fi from a smart building perspective is the other side. It's the smart base building. In the office world, we call this a smart building converged network, building a fiber network to tie in things like access control, lighting control, BMS control. In multifamily, using managed Wi-Fi gives you the ability to build that same converged fiber network with the primary use of delivering internet to your residents. So the cost is justifiable, and this is something that has this primary use. Its secondary use becomes the foundation of smart building. It may not be things that you're going to do today, but it allows you to have flexibility to make the building smart in the future. That may be staying competitive with a new project across the street. It may be, let's say, a global pandemic that all of a sudden has you looking to deploy indoor air quality sensors that need a network to connect to. that network is there. It's ready to accept new smart devices. It could be smart locks. It could be smart thermostats. It could even be taking smart thermostats for vacant units and putting them onto a network to ensure that the management team can control them and we don't have pipes bursting or wasting energy in vacant units. I really like to think about smart building within multifamily space from the same perspective that WiredScore has designed our Smart Score certification around. We look at 4 key outcomes, which are mitigating risk, making the improving the tenant experience, reducing the operating expense, and improving the tenant experience. If you're not able to tie back to one or multiple of those 4 key outcomes, you should really potentially reconsider that smart deployment and think about, this is about the business case for smart. So a common use of smart in the multifamily space is addressing late night or after hour lockouts to say, hey, we can have less people in the building to help support after hour stuff if we're able to help residents get back into their units using smart locks that we can open from a central location. I think this is a huge benefit. And again, for many that aren't ready to jump headfirst into the world of smart building today, this is what you can do to future-proof your buildings for the future. Last attribute before we dive into a case study is cellular. And I sort of chuckle at the cellular Band-Aid. For those of you not familiar, a DAS system or distributed antenna system is essentially a cell tower within your building that broadcasts LTE 4G cell phone signal to the occupants of the building. In the office world, we estimate those DAS systems today to be about $1.50 per square foot as a capital cost. They are generally too expensive to be putting into multifamily buildings. And they can be quite a headache and frustration. In addition, the 3 wireless providers, Verizon, AT&T, and Sprint T-Mobile, are not very excited about bringing their connection, what we call signal source, to these multifamily buildings because of the density of the building compared to an equal-sized office building. So while DAS is the premium solution and really the best way to improve cell phone coverage, what we're hearing is it's generally not feasible for most buildings, but cell phone coverage has to be addressed. Wi-Fi calling is something you may be familiar with. If not, you can go into your iPhone settings, go to cellular, and you'll see a little toggle on for Wi-Fi calling. What that is doing is taking your voice traffic from your phone and routing it through a Wi-Fi network that you're connected to. It's not a perfect solution. It has evolved. It was created as a Band-Aid by the 3 wireless providers to help get some of the traffic off of their severely overloaded 4G network. And we hope to see that improve with 5G. Wi-Fi calling is truly, I think, the best solution for multifamily. But the key here is with a traditional internet deployment, again, having a modem in in each unit, Wi-Fi calling has real limitations, and that the limitation is that as soon as you leave your unit, you drop the call. Additionally, because these networks for managed Wi-Fi are commercial grade networks, they can be provisioned to support Wi-Fi calling and to actually prioritize voice traffic to ensure that this feature works. There are times when Wi-Fi calling doesn't work well. We've heard certainly some mixed reviews from some clients, great reviews from others. But I think when you start to look and do the math on DAS versus not putting in a DAS, this becomes the best way to allow a resident to leave their unit still on a call, to walk throughout the building, maintain that call simply because the network is allowing them to stay on their home network, and to ensure that they can use those common spaces. I would also call out a safety aspect here to ensure cellular connectivity and the entire building, garages included, is something a lot of our clients are really starting to consider. So I know that was a lot, but you're thinking, okay, you didn't talk about the dollars. You didn't talk about the found revenue And that's the part maybe everyone's most excited to hear about. So for that, let's talk through a little bit of a case study. And this is not a specific building. The way this case study was put together was sourcing information, sourcing numbers from 3 different managed Wi-Fi providers and averaging out the costs. It's important to call out that managed Wi-Fi, I've seen hundreds of thousands of dollars in difference in proposals for the same building. And those can often be due to the quality of equipment being used, the density of the network being laid out, how many access points and how close together they are, as well as a few other features. So, this is a back of the envelope, if you will, and will hopefully help you understand the costs that are required up front, something to help you drive a more accurate development budget in the future, but also to help you think about the benefits of this over time and the revenue. So I'll talk through the numbers here. We got to $800 per, these are the capital costs associated with the building of the network. So you've got $800 per unit in equipment. So that's really looking at the wireless access points throughout the entire building. That's a share of each of all the common area access points as well. We've got $175 per unit for IDF. So from your IDF to the unit cabling, that's going to be generally category 6 or 7, Cat 6, various versions of Cat 6, but making sure that you've got that cabling there and that cabling is ready for future generations of Wi-Fi. We've got $6,000 per IDF. So based on the size of a floor plate, you'll be able to determine, you'll need to determine how many IDFs you need. On average, we can sort of assume about every 3 or 4 floors will require an IDF. The driving factor behind that is the distance of a category cable, of a Cat 6 or Cat 7 cable, is about 300 feet. So you've got to be able to go from the IDF up and all the way out to the perimeter of the building, and that will drive how frequently you'll need these. It's just worth knowing that, and there are instances in perhaps like a garden style where you might be better building multiple fiber risers and having IDFs less frequently. So those are $6,000. From an OpEx cost, so these are your recurring and ongoing costs, $25 per unit per month. That is the cost of the internet circuit, that commercial grade circuit that we talked about. These are significantly more expensive internet services than your home grade internet. To put it rough perspective, 200 megabit circuit from Xfinity at home may cost you, let's say, $120 a month, and a comparable 100 meg circuit from Zayo, Crown Castle, or one of the commercial internet providers is going to cost you closer to $800 per month, and you're going to want more than 100 megs. $65 per unit per month is the average cost that owners are charging residents for internet. The way we come to that cost is generally by looking at the local competition, Verizon, Comcast, whomever, and undercutting them by $10 or $15 to ensure that your service is as appealing as possible. You can say to your prospective residents, this service is not only 10 times better and has more speed, but is also $10 or $15 cheaper. Based on, we're looking at about $40 per unit per month into the owner's pocket. The capabilities of this network, we average out at about a gigabit, 1,000 megabits, but call it 980 megabits per second. That's hardwired in. 300 to 400 megabits on Wi-Fi. The reality is that most devices actually can't accept Wi-Fi faster than 300 or 400 megabits anyways. That will certainly evolve over time, but that's where we're at right now. Of course, you're getting the low latency and the symmetrical connection that we discussed, as well as hopefully a much better customer support experience than the traditional internet providers can offer, and property management training. I should call out here as well the value of having that base building circuit, right, which is not just your smart building and connected devices like I discussed, but also your management office, your parking systems, your base building systems, your BMS will all get put onto this network. Let's see. Okay. And then last here's your sort of actual case study. So I did a 12-story building with 180 units, 15 units per floor. We're coming out to just shy of $200,000 to build this network with 4 IDF rooms. Cost per unit is going to be about $1,100 when we factor in that horizontal cabling and the access points. The operating expense for internet service and for the managed services, this would be paid as a single bill to your managed service provider, is about $54,000 a year. And if you were to charge $65 a month, you'd be looking at $144,000. There's an assumption here of 100% hit rate. That hit rate really only comes if you have managed Wi-Fi as the only provider in the building and they're not competing with a traditional provider. Based on this, profit to the owner would be about $90,000. And I believe, forgot to put it in here, but I believe that comes out to about a 2.5-year payback before you start putting that $90,000 into your pocket as revenue each year. The last thing I'll say before I wrap things up is the traditional internet providers, so Verizon, Comcast, RCN, Spectrum, they have all or are all starting to offer their own managed Wi-Fi in order to stay competitive. I think that's still sort of early days for some of those services, but I believe those could be great options as well. One of the defining things to look at will be how they'll address customer service. I think it will be tough for them to compete with customer service. But on the other side, they may have a faster response time for a hardware failure than a smaller traditional managed Wi-Fi provider who may not be based locally. So hopefully that was helpful. I will wrap things up there. I appreciate everyone's time. And obviously, if there's questions, I'm happy to address them now. Looks like there are some. And then also, I'm happy to, I'll sort of leave this up actually, if people want to dive deeper or have specific questions about a building or provider, want recommendations about providers that we're seeing doing great work in this space, please feel free to reach out to me directly. I've got a question here. Okay, so the question is on hit rates. We just discussed having a single carrier versus having multiple carriers. Is a great question. I guess if I rephrase the question, it's, can I have multiple providers in the building? So someone competing with my managed Wi-Fi, should I have just managed Wi-Fi? There is no right answer to this question. This question is something that we're seeing the industry evolve rapidly. For the first time, probably 5 months ago, I had a client say to me, we are going to do managed Wi-Fi only, and we are no longer offering a competing provider. WiredScore believes strongly in optionality, but I think that given the different quality for these two types of services, I feel really comfortable with having a building deploy just managed Wi-Fi and not giving the optionality. We're seeing, I don't have the numbers in front of me, but TV services are basically gone and everything's pushed to streaming. And so, just going with managed Wi-Fi is, I think, certainly a bit more simple, a little bit less work for you guys as the owners and developers, and will certainly help with that payback time and increase the revenue. Another question here. Let's see. Talked about this one a little bit, but yeah, so drastic differences in cost. People are seeing drastic differences in cost from different providers or on proposals for the same building. I would, first of all, we're happy to look at some of those things. I'm happy to look at those proposals and give you our thoughts on them. Again, feel free to reach out. But I think a few different factors there. It can be anything from a a market where conduit is required versus a market where conduit's not required. It can be union cabling versus non-union. There can be real differences in opinion on how to design these networks and how close together access points and switches and IDFs need to be built out. And I think the last thing is really, different companies are getting competitive with owners to try to win business and become that preferred provider. So I think, a bunch of different factors there. It can be very difficult to compare apples to apples. Oh, the other thing I would call out is the size of the internet circuit that they're proposing to bring to your building. If it's a 10 gig circuit, the operating expense on that is going to climb through the roof as compared to a 5 gig circuit, thousands of dollars per month. And that's something that can definitely change that. Great. Rachel, I don't know if there's other questions that you're seeing that I'm not, but.
No, I think you've got them all. Thank you so much, Dave. Thank you, everyone who has attended. Our goal is to do more sessions like this with different speakers from within and with externally from WiredScore and not. So we hope to see you all again soon. We will be sending the recording of this session out. So look for that soon in your inboxes. And thank you again, everyone, for joining.
Thanks, Rachel. Thanks, everyone.